Good afternoon to you. I'm an architect in private practice. We do quite a bit of housing, and I'm a council member of the RIAI, the Institute of Architects, and the outgoing president. We've been working on developing a housing policy for a very long time. Sorry, which button do I press? The large one. Oops, how do I get back? Okay, right. Okay, thank you. Okay, we've been working on this for a very long time, and the housing crisis has taken some people by surprise, but in 2011, nearly 7 years ago, we predicted that there was going to be a very serious homelessness problem, that there was going to be a very serious demographic problem, and that we were going to rob our future generation of the right to have somewhere to live. Nobody listened to us. It takes about 3 years to get through planning, through the regulatory framework for the project, for any project to get on site. This timescale is now too long. We have an opportunity now, with the new government, with the momentum, with the realization that we have to sort this out. We have the opportunity now to plan for this growing and changing population. I think it's very important that we realize that our population is changing. With the greatest respect to Micheál, the study done on the 3-bedroom semi-D, we should not be building 3-bedroom semi-Ds. They are totally unsustainable. He had to obviously do the numbers on that, and it is very useful to have those numbers there. Coming on from John, who's on the planning side, from Michael on the money side, Pat on the sustainability and the energy side, is really where we come in as the architects. We join all of these things together, and what we're really talking about is we're talking about building the right homes in the right places at the right cost, of the right quality. And quality is the thing that we emphasize more than anything else. We don't want to be caught in the headlights again. We have the opportunity now. And what we need is we need an agreed vision at its simplest of what we want the country to look like. Do we want it to be rolled out fields and fields and fields of low density housing? Do we want point block high rise? What do we want? And that's what we look at. The executive summary of thank you. The executive summary we have up there, what we look at is we look at building sustainable communities, which is the sole reason for having housing once you get beyond shelter. It is about making communities. That's what all of this is about. We also look at policies in terms of delivery, and again, Pat has mentioned that, as indeed has Micheál. It is really important that we enable the houses that we require to be built. Our third policy is improving the planning system. John will have worked on this with us for some time. And again, it is not that we want to speed up things unnecessarily, but it is to make the planning system mesh fully with the needs of the community. And our final one is to protect the consumer, because one of the lessons we really have learned from the last boom is that the consumer suffered, and suffered very badly. So those are our headlines in terms of what our policies are. Okay. So what we're just looking at, these are the challenges: the population challenge, the number of houses we have to build, and the demographic challenge. And I think that the population one has in a way been covered, but it is really important that we realize that we are going to have 1.2 million more people in this country. So it's not just about housing, it's about schools, it's about shops, it's about the way we live. So in the next 23 years, we'll have 1 million. In the next 30, we will have 1.2. The demographic is also really the thing that is changing. When we look at the people who are in houses at the moment, we think of the family house as the 3-bedroom semi-D. In Dublin, families occupy just over 30% of the houses. Most residential units are not occupied by families, and we have not catered for them yet. We need to look at the way that demographic is going to change. We have an aging population which has to have a sense of community. It has to have places to live. I'm just going to go briefly into some of these. So creating the, I think you need to go back. Okay, no, move forward is grand. Okay, so these are the, I'm not going to go through these. I don't know if you can read them, but they're the numbers. These are our aging population. And 25% of the population will be over 65 soon. If you could go on, please. Thank you. So creating sustainable communities, again, I'm not going to read through these, but it is really just to look at the way, not just the market works, but the way communities work. The private rental sector provides homes for many people who would qualify for social housing and whose rents are supported by the state through rent supplement. Rental accommodation and leasing schemes account for around 100,000 households in the private sector, or a third of PRTB registered tenancies. We must address the issues of security of tenure and viable business models for landlords. So in making the sustainable communities, we have to accept that the owner-occupier is not the only model, and we need to move on. Other models that we need in terms of the supply side, and they are coming on stream, is the encouragement of rights and other investments. By extending, hopefully, the Living City initiative has not been very successful. It has been a little bit too restrictive. By extending that, hopefully that will free up accommodation within towns and cities. The regeneration that this would produce would generate, again, that sense of community, and as Pat said, the walkable city and the urban villages. Thank you. Okay, so this one, John, is going to be a little bit, anyway, I'll point out the first one. We need to have a flexible view of how we look at space standards. We now do have national space standards. We have some issues with them, but we need to have consistency within the entire system as to what works. Again, I'm not going to go through all of those, but what I would like to just briefly go through is that in order to address these, we need to speed up the process. We can do some immediate measures in terms of speeding it up. The first is to examine the existing built fabric. So it isn't just about building new houses, it's about filling the spaces that are already there. We need to look to see what we can use of what we've already built to provide housing and other accommodation. We need to look at flexibility in terms of existing building stock, because the existing building stock does not generally comply with either space standards or indeed building regulation standards, but we cannot leave our upper floors of all our towns and cities empty for lack of vision. Second measure is, again, what we should be doing is just getting the shovel-ready projects going. Dublin City Council are doing a lot of work on that, but it is outrageous that there are shovel-ready projects which cannot go primarily for finance. And again, Micheál mentioned the financial system. That really is utterly crucial. The third measure is one, again, that I think John would agree with, is that the planning authorities and local authorities need to be proactive in providing housing. social housing should not be seen as the support to the private sector. The social housing programme should roll out on an ongoing basis, continuous, providing for the needs of the citizen. While the private sector can assist in the provision of social housing, the responsibility should not be delegated to others. Local authorities should be in a position to provide more social housing relatively quickly. Okay, next is. The second bit of our policy is delivery of new models. It's delivery of new models of housing and delivery of new models of finance. One of the things that we're very supportive of is community land trusts. We understand money, we understand the way that our developer clients operate. We understand how they have to be able to get a return on their profit, on their money. We understand the way that they have to have a sustainable model for their own businesses. So it's really, really important that those financial instruments are in place. The 200 million that they're talking about spending from 2017 will help. It should have been spent over the last 5 years, but it will help, but it should be opened up much more quickly. Why wait another year? We know where the blockages are. The design of all of our housing needs to be carefully planned, and we have a lot of environmental issues, as Pat has indicated. We need to be sure that we can deliver an acceptable, livable, enjoyable, high-density living. We have to have enough people in the same locations so that the community becomes sustainable, not just in environmental terms and in climate terms, but in terms of being able to support a community. If you look at some of the work that has been done, the docks are a very good example of very high density living, relatively seamless social housing integrated into them, and very good facilities. We can do it. We've proven we can do it. Adamstown is on its way, not ironically, but possibly interestingly. These are both SDZs. We can do it, and we can provide high quality, high density living. If we again look at the places that people like to live, Glasnevin, Ranelagh, places like that, they have got the highest density of any part of this city. So we have to think about that, and we have to make those sorts of communities. Again, the critical one in this is develop urban villages. And they don't have to be urban villages, they can be villages. We also have a very strong view of the way that technology can work in rural areas. I'm sure you're all aware that when Uber was invented, probably in this, or financed probably in this hall, the intention of it was to provide a social network for people who lived in rural areas to have access to transport. It was never intended to be what it has turned out to be. But that use of technology to bind communities together, while it may not be a physical thing, it is really important that we build in that infrastructure. Okay, I'm not going to go through any more of those. You can see them up there. How am I doing for time? Sorry. Okay, the third policy, and just bang on target, Mr. Phillips comes in, improving the planning system. The planning system is one of the severe blockages in terms of where the housing is going to be built, how it's going to be built, and how quickly it can be built. It isn't actually the fault of the planning system itself, but it is the way that the system works. We for instance, I say, we do some housing. You cannot get a project on the ground quicker than 2 years. And that just is not acceptable when we have an emergency in terms of housing. The easier access to planners is obviously one that we would feel very, very important. And again, in fairness to the planners, they do their best. Unnecessary compliance conditions. We have, on every single project, we have got compliance conditions that are totally unnecessary in our opinion. They need to be looked at. The yellow book needs to be followed. Obviously statutory timeline for An Bord Pleanála. Predictability in the planning system is one of the things that we feel is holding things back. It is, in a way, similar to construction. You are dealing with a human endeavor, so it is very hard to get that level of consistency right through the planning system. But we urgently think it should happen. Okay, next one, please. The final part of our policy is the protection of the consumer. We've all seen the effects of building failure. Avoidance is obviously better than cure. But in the case where something does happen, it is totally wrong to have the building owner or the building occupier end up with having to sort out a problem that is not of their making. We have argued very strongly for latent defects insurance to be mandatory in all housing projects. The BCAR system hopefully will improve things, but it is exceptionally cumbersome. And we would have to say that there has been money available to continue the development of the BCMS, of the Building Control Management System. It hasn't been spent, and it is still in a beta form over a year after it came in fact 2 years after it came in, and really we need to invest money in it. Training facilities, the workforce, we suffered a massive brain drain. We have to get that skill set back. I think if you go on to the next one, I think I'm coming to the conclusion. We had 3 different recommendations. The immediate one was to do with homelessness and to set up a triage system, temporary increase in rent allowances. There is an emergency out there. Rehabilitation and re-inhabiting voids, which again I know Dublin City tried to do, and increasing bed spaces. Next one, please. Medium-term ones, again, you can read them faster than I can say them. Next one. Okay, the long-term ones, again, you can read them all there. The government has taken this on seriously now, or appears to be taking it on seriously. But until money is spent, nothing is going to happen. So you can produce any number of recommendations, you can produce any number of plans, unless you start fixing the financial system and making the money available, nothing will happen. Thank you very much.